Hello everyone, Namaste from Nepal. Let's get started with the TR robot first. As per the guidelines, initially the robot was placed on the ground and the rectangle projection was drawn. Just for clearing out the projection, top view footage of the robot was also taken. Likewise, we measured the distance between the two pairs of opposite sides of the rectangle. Here we found out the length of one side to be 900 mm. Similarly, the length of the consecutive side was found to be nearly 800 mm. Then we move on to the next part of measuring the weight of the robot by placing the straight plane ply on the base. 29.19 kg was the reading seen on the weighing machine after the placement of the robot. Further, the robot starts from the starting zone and we use the LiDAR sensor for its localization. Moving on, 4-bar mechanisms are fitted with the grippers to pick up 3 arrows at a time from the rack. Pneumatic-based actuation is used in the grippers. After that, those arrows are loaded into the conveyor belt system as required. Likewise, the arrows are transported into the launcher mechanism using the guide hook. And then the arrows are loaded into the launcher mechanism one at a time. After loading the arrows into the launcher, it is thrown using the spring clutch system. Here, the spring is elongated by the DC motor and released using the clutch mechanism actuated by the pneumatic. The pneumatic actuator at the top protects the arrow's fin from obstruction and the damper at the impact point hits the arrow's back. Ultimately, this is all for the TR robot, and now we move on to the next robot. The next robot is the DR robot, and as before, the robot was initially placed on the ground and the rectangle projection was drawn as required. Same here, the top view footage of the robot was also taken. Then, as before, we measured the distance between the two pairs of opposite sides of the rectangle. Here we found out the length of one side to be nearly 700 mm. Similarly, the length of the consecutive side was also found to be 700 mm. 19.07 kg was the reading seen on the weighing machine after the placement of the robot, which finalizes our requirement of the total weight of two robots to be less than 50 kg. Further, the robot starts from the starting zone and we use the LiDAR sensor for its localization. Similarly, picking up the arrow from the inner game field which do not enter the pot is why the DR robot was made in the first place. For those arrows to be picked, we used a robotic arm having 3 degrees of freedom. Likewise, it is actuated with the help of 2 motors and a pneumatic. As the arrows picked by the arms will be transported to the throwing mechanism, we use a system consisting of 3 pneumatic actuators for transportation. Similarly, the arrow is then placed between the 2 rollers mounted on the shaft of the DC motor. Likewise, 2 pneumatics are then actuated to compress the nylon rollers for throwing the arrow into the pot. So these nylon rollers are wrapped with rubbers to preserve the arrow and its fins. Ultimately, this is all for the DR robot. Thank you all.